Welcome back to the Optimized Business Podcast. This is a show where we talk with different entrepreneurs and operators building resilient businesses in the modern economy. So I'm Nick Clink, and today's guest is Adam. He is founder of Yuro, and he actually has an incredible journey and story, going to running a multi-million dollar e-commerce company, now leading his own consulting firm. And this all started back, he didn't even have a place to live, right? So look where he came from to where he's at now. He's gonna, in this episode, just kind of share what that journey's been like, the challenges he's faced along the way, and the success that he's noticed, working with some of these big companies in the e-commerce space. So we'll dive into how he built Yuro Holdings and kind of really what he learned from scaling brands across Shopify, TikTok, Amazon, that sort of thing. So Adam, welcome to the show. I've been looking forward to this one. How's the week going?
Thank you for having me. The week's been going good, hustling, getting some new clients, getting work done. It's been a good week so far.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you're calling in from what part of Jersey?
I'm in Elizabeth, New Jersey. It's about 15 minutes away from EWR. Guarantee
Nice.
everyone knows where that is. Worst airport in the United States.
Yeah, we probably all had a couple experiences there over the years. But I know I read through your background. What immediately jumped out, was how you got started, literally organizing a chaotic warehouse before being recognized for your talent and then kind of diving headfirst into e-commerce. Can you take us back to that moment? What did those early days look like? How did you go from that first opportunity to leading entire e-commerce operations?
Yeah, I started out, as you mentioned, I didn't even have a place to rest my head. And I applied to a random warehouse position that I found on Craigslist, of all
Oh, back
places.
when people still use Craigslist for
Yeah.
jobs. That's awesome.
And I borrowed clothes from my friend because I had, ratty clothes because, again, I wasn't able to find a place to rest my head. And I walked in. The guy decided to take a shot on me and hired me. I was his first US employee. And I went into the warehouse and it was a disaster area. Those giant laundry bins that you see in hospitals, that's what all of his inventory was in. And I was just like, this ain't going to work. I had him buy me shelving and, you know, containers, and I organized his whole warehouse, made it streamlined so it would be easy to pick and pack the orders, and something that went from 8 hours of work turned into two because there was organization. And he decided that I was just not fit for a warehouse position. I should be doing something much bigger. And he taught me how to do every step of e-commerce, from buying to customer service to listing the products. And we ended up starting our own company together, a tattoo supply business. That was fun. I love tattoos. I just don't have that artistic skill when it comes to it. But selling the needles and stuff I can do. And then throughout the years after that, I was helping a lot of different companies just get their footing in e-commerce or grow their e-commerce presence. But I realized that, I would be at these places for a year or two. Wasn't really looking that good when I was applying to new places. So I just decided, you know what, instead of doing that, let me start my own agency and do this. And my resume and my work history will only show one place, 700 different other ones of very short tenures.
Nice. Yeah. When you're so over those kind of like year, 2 year, stints that you had on your resume, was it just because you were brought in to fix these operational issues and scale the business, and then you reach that point and you kind of move on to the next challenge, or what was the reasoning behind these kind of short stints with the different companies?
So yeah, they would bring me in to do a specific thing to help them expand their marketplace reach or boost their SEO, redo their website, streamline their operations, whatever it may be. But then once I completed that, I kind of hit a plateau. There was no more room for growth within those companies, or there just wasn't a need for my experience anymore. And I decided I would move on to give myself more challenges and give myself a new perspective. And, I ended up helping brands, I ended up helping resellers, refurbishers, and even marketplaces themselves.
Nice. So once you made that leap into building your own company and agency with Euro, be honest, what was that transition? What did that actually look like? Was it scary? Was it easy? How was that transition actually for you?
It was definitely scary. I had a full-time employment when I decided to start it. At that time, I wasn't as uneasy about it,
Right.
but then a few months later, the company I was working for did some restructuring, and part of that restructuring was closing the e-commerce division. So I ended up getting laid off and I decided, okay, now I need to put 100% into my own thing. I'm like, I'm tired of having that fear that I'm going to get laid off the next week out of with no control of my own.
Yeah.
But with my own company, if I'm failing, it's my own fault. It's not someone else decided that we don't need that division anymore, or, we're scaling back the head count. It's if I'm not doing my job, then I'm not getting paid. If I'm doing my job, then I'm getting paid. And if I do it well, I get paid more. So it's definitely an adventure and I enjoy it way more than working for one company. Now I get to work for many different companies or with many different companies, and I get to see different ways that companies operate. Things that I may have not thought of doing in the past, now I can use in the future because they did one thing slightly different than I did, and I'm like, "You know what? That's actually a better way of doing it."
No, that's awesome. I kind of from our previous conversation, we spoke a little bit about kind of how you built Euro and the network model. Like you would bring in specialists per project rather than like traditional hiring. Has that approach helped you stay, lean and essentially more profitable when building this business?
Absolutely, because not every project needs the same specialist. So, me trying to hire on, a guy that specializes in specifically eBay or specifically Walmart, I might not need them for a month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on what the project is, and if I had them as a full-time employee, I'm paying them a salary to sit there and twiddle their thumbs, essentially, and, it's better to hire those specialists in those areas at those times, and, most of them have their own full-time jobs or own their own companies, and it's great to, support other local businesses and help them grow in the process.
Nice. So it's kind of a win-win. It's also good business for them, but on the flip side of things, you don't need 30 specialists on a payroll when you're calling upon maybe 3 or 4 a month, even if yeah, I get what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Now, kind of on the industry side of things, I know you've been in this industry long enough to see a lot of change. The rise of Shopify, even to some of the deal websites that we were just talking about, to now there's TikTok and, AI kind of redefining how brands grow. What changes in the past couple of years have surprised you the most, maybe have seen the most impact on the industry?
From what I've been seeing, it's definitely AI and TikTok. I've noticed it within the job market itself because that's how I find a lot of my clients looking for, they're looking for an e-commerce specialist. I am an e-commerce specialist. So I reach out to them and they're able to not pay a full-time salary by hiring Euro. But what I've seen is a lot of these companies are looking for people that have a mix of everything. And now AI is huge on that. And AI is definitely something that I was a late adopter to, and I'll fully admit to that. But now that I use it myself, I use it for a lot of the client projects that I work with. I use it for a lot of content that I get help written with and everything like that. But TikTok, that's definitely taken over the market. I know a past client of mine, that I still work with from here and there, they did 3 hours of live TikToking, and they made more money in that 3 hours than they did in a week of selling on Amazon. And when you think of that, that's crazy because Amazon's always been the bread and butter for
Yeah,
e-commerce.
that's where you wanna get and get ranked, and that's where you wanna be. And that's what everybody was told at least, and that's what you thought.
Absolutely. Like, I just went to a convention not too long ago, and you can tell just by the breakout sessions and the keynote speakers how much e-commerce has changed. Because just last year, going to that same convention, everything was Amazon focused or Shopify focused. And I don't remember even hearing Amazon or Shopify the entire time I was there. Everything was TikTok focused, and how now's the time to do it because it's not as saturated. And I've realized it myself when I'm doom scrolling before I go to bed. Probably 8 out of the 10 videos in a row are people advertising something for sale, and they're doing it in a way that entertains you and you actually sit there and you watch it. But TikTok itself has turned more into a marketplace than a social media outlet at this point because everyone's trying to sell you something,
Yeah.
and it's just growing tremendously. And I've been telling everyone if they're not on TikTok, they need to get on TikTok.
Dang. And when you said less saturated, is that just kind of comparing it to typical, like, kind of what we've known as typical markets like Amazon and Shopify?
Absolutely, because when you go on to a typical marketplace like Amazon, you type in Bluetooth speaker, you're gonna get bombarded with 50 different brands that all have the exact same speaker with a different
Yep,
logo on it.
yep.
But on TikTok, it learns what you like. It learns the algorithm of the videos that you're liking and everything like that. So when you type in Bluetooth speaker, it's going to show you Bluetooth speakers that fit you better. They're not gonna just show you 50 of the exact same speaker. And I've also noticed it, even Facebook, I've noticed it with their ads recently, that they're doing more targeted to the what the person likes. I saw an ad for Euro actually, because I run ads there, on a video of somebody chasing a robber off their front porch with a flamethrower. And I'm like, the flamethrower part of it, that's totally something I would watch, and it's crazy that they put Euro, which is something that I would be interested in, as the advertisement on there. I took a picture of it, I shared it with my friends, and I was just like, it's definitely targeted marketing, but at the same time, I just wasted ad spend on myself.
Yeah, definitely did. Yeah, that's always funny. I've been in that same boat where I've worked with a company and we run YouTube ads and some other things, and I'll be like kind of doom scrolling and I'm getting the ads and I'm like, and then I'm going in a meeting next week and they're talking about our cost per acquisition and I'm like, oh, I got like four of our ads.
I always make sure to click my own ad because then at least, it they're like, "Okay, well, somebody clicked through." And,
Yeah,
even if it's
I
myself.
I agree. Anything for those click through rates, but no, that's interesting. I think, but wouldn't you say that it's even though TikTok is this kind of growing marketplace, it's less saturated. It's not for everybody, right? I'm thinking I have a family business where it's my uncle and he does like a flooring company, right? And we've discussed kind of the possibility of getting onto TikTok and like selling, like kind of snapping flooring, but we're like, I don't know if that's actually would work. What's your thoughts on that?
It's definitely a niche because it's definitely something that not everyone is looking for, but at the
Right.
same time, there's no such thing as too much content going out into the world. See it my best friend, he's a architecture, and that's what he does. He builds plans for people's houses,
Yeah.
and he's finding clients
On TikTok?
via TikTok.
Nice.
He when he's driving from point A to point B, he just opens up TikTok and he sits there and he makes a video about like, some unforeseen
Issue.
thing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
happened, and people are engaging and he's growing and growing, and now he's doing lives and people are watching him build blueprints and asking questions, and he's gaining, more followers and gaining
Feeding
more
that
clients.
algorithm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I saw something last night that about TikTok, and it's definitely true. You have to be your authentic self. You have to be 100% your authentic self because people are going to swipe away if they think you're just there trying to sell.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that TikTok has gotten really good at is finding authentic creators for specific items and getting them to create the content for those items, and people love it and they buy from it. I buy way too much stupid stuff that I don't need from TikTok just because of the algorithm, like a flamethrower.
So, yeah, it works. Yeah, I don't think we've all been there. No, okay. That was, something I was curious about. Now, switching paces a little bit, I think, one thing I admired with learning more about your business was how you approached, kind of you don't really use cold email or anything like that. You do have like a newsletter that people can, opt into, and you can actually have like a system of referrals. Can you kind of walk through, for maybe some other agency owners that just rely on like just cold outreach or, maybe just referrals from clients, but they're not getting enough, what kind of your system looks like so that maybe they could learn a few things from it that they might be able to implement?
Absolutely. Yeah, from what I noticed is when you start sending out cold emails or, cold texts and stuff like that, I know I personally, every time I get one of those cold emails, it's either I'm throwing it in the trash or I'm hitting spam, depending on what the content in that email is. I've decided to try a different approach, which has been working, and it's that same email list that I acquired for cold outreach. Instead of adding them to some kind of, sequence of 7 emails or whatever, trying to tell them what Euro does and how we can help them grow, I add them to my newsletter. A simple addition to the newsletter. Within the first 3 newsletters, I can see who it's actually
If they
going.
open it, if they opt out, like, you can pretty much
Exactly.
see, like, right away, it's like, "Alright, does this person hate this, or are they completely ignoring it, or what's going on?"
Absolutely, and then after about a month, month and a half of, you know, gaining that data of what articles they're reading from the newsletter, what things they're clicking on, I can generally get a feel if they are somebody I should do,
Yeah, if
now
you should send a message
essentially
out.
a warm outreach because they know who I am now.
Yeah.
And if that it's a warm outreach, "Hey, I've noticed that you've been reading my newsletter. I see that, the articles that are, really hitting home for you have to do with SEO or have to do with marketplace expansion. That's something that Euro helps with. Love
Yeah.
to jump on a quick 15-minute call and see what we can do. Throw my Calendly
Yeah,
link in
because it's
there, and
not
then
cold
boom."
anymore, because you have the data of what they've actually been clicking on and what they're interested in, and that probably tells you what their pain point is, so, you're not going in with just kind of guessing. I mean, you're guessing a little bit, but you have a lot more context, and again, the big thing is they know who you are now.
Exactly, and then we also have a referral program where anybody that we work with, whether it be a podcast or a past client, or just somebody that, I'm friends with and might not even be in the industry, but, has their own website and I helped, redo it. I have a referral program where they can make a percentage of first year revenue based off of a client that they brought me. So, it definitely helps, with that warm introduction. They already know me, they trust me, they're referring me to somebody they know. And then I help that client out, throw them on the referral program. And then boom, now I'm getting more referrals. And it's a snowball effect where I don't have to really do cold outreach anymore. I even with Facebook ads and LinkedIn ads and Google ads and stuff like that, I know that that's just me putting money into something that might not produce the results that
Yeah.
I want it to produce, but it's also getting people to see my name over and
Yep.
over and over and over
Yep.
again. And if they don't click through that, they don't click through it. But if they need help, they've seen the Euro name over and over again. And I might be the first person they reach out to and ask for the help.
I completely agree. I love the both sides of it. I love the newsletter, but the referral structure, it's smart, it's simple, everybody wins. I think that's a really good takeaway for anybody watching. And then one more like question on the newsletter side of things. What's the frequency of that look like? Is this 2 times a week or does it kind of vary depending on, content and what you've been working on or what kind of goes into a successful newsletter in terms of frequency?
So yeah, I have it go out every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time,
Every day.
every day. We write 7 blog posts a day, and the newsletter basically summarizes those 7 blog posts from the previous day. It goes out, it has so far been successful when it comes to things. I started the LinkedIn side of it because I realized that there were a lot of people that I was connected to on LinkedIn that I don't have their emails. So I was like,
Yeah.
let
Oh,
me
yeah,
put
true.
those same blog posts on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And that again goes out at 10 a.m. I wanted to keep it very structured, very simple. But then I also do special editions. I acquired a partnership tomorrow, and at noon, it's going out today, a special newsletter post that goes out that's strictly about that
Nice.
because that's something that I felt like I didn't want to get buried in that
Right.
newsletter.
Right.
I want people to know, like, hey, Euro is here. We're partnered with them. Let's do this. And every time I do a special edition newsletter, that actually ends up driving the most traffic because it's something that they're not used to. It's like, oh, every day at 10, I'm getting the Euro Effect
Yeah.
newsletter. But then all of a sudden at noon, hey, wait, I just got another newsletter update from them. What's going on here? And I've noticed that those have the most click through rates. And because I've, built them up more with the other newsletters, that one has a lot more a lot more click through actions and everything like that. So they actually, do what I want them to do with that newsletter.
Nice. Well, congratulations. I'll be looking forward to that coming out. I'll definitely drop a like and maybe do a little click on there. When looking back at your journey before starting the newsletter to where you're at now, have you seen like a pretty consistent growth, not in terms of revenue, but like, for example, LinkedIn? Have you noticed the algorithm picking you up more? You getting more connections? Have you noticed consistent content actually does improve your LinkedIn,
So that's actually funny that you asked that one because my fiance came into my office this morning while I was preparing the 7 blog posts for I think it's the 22nd because I always do it a couple of days out. And she came in and she's like, "You're always in here writing your blog posts, doing your social media posts." And I was just like, "Yeah." But then I showed her the graph of when I wasn't doing the newsletter, when I wasn't doing the blog posts, when I wasn't doing the social media posts. Because I took a couple of months off just to see if it was the newsletter or if it was, just driving
Yeah,
traffic to the site.
right.
And I showed her the difference where for the 3 months I didn't do it, I was getting, like, no traffic, no one was coming to the site, no new followers, no new engagement, and then I started the newsletter back up, and everything grew about 650% in the first
Wow.
month, and at so the 15th of this month, I already outdid last month's engagement.
Wow.
So in the first half of this month, I already outdid last month. And I showed her that and she's like, okay, well, I'll leave you alone then
Yeah,
because
she's like, "I'll leave you
obviously
to
it's
it
working.
now."
And it helps. Like I help promote, she has a local cleaning business. So I help promote her thing through my business. I do a local spotlight in my newsletter and through my social medias where somebody that within, the tri-state area that I spotlight their business to help drive traffic to their business, even if it's outside of e-commerce. I've done architecture, realty, plumbing, cleaning, all those different things. None of that has to do with e-commerce, but I feel like local businesses should help local businesses no matter what.
Yeah. No, I agree, and the experience, the landscape for helping an online business compared to maybe helping your local business through SEO, I mean, I feel like it's a completely different challenge, like, you're it's very easy for you to step in and help a local business gain some of their local presence that they don't have,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. And, when I promote a realtor, for instance, you know, that realtor doesn't need me, but they share that article that I wrote. They share the blog post. They share the social media posts. And now their followers that
Their network
might
becomes
not have ever known who Euro was is now reading a blog post written by Euro about them. And they're clicking through to the main page and seeing. And if they're an e-commerce company or, just want help growing their online presence, they reach out. And all I had to do was write that one little article about the local business, promote them a little bit, and it helps them grow, it helps me grow, and it puts me in front of a lot more eyes that I didn't think, I can get without doing that.
Yeah. I'm gonna I know I'm gonna be checking it out hereafter. I might be sending you a message here in the next week or 2. I'm like, I need to set some sort of system up like my own to get it, because 650% growth in terms of, just views and connect like, it's a lot of growth.
Yeah, I've tried the whole, going through LinkedIn too and like commenting on people's posts to drive
Yeah,
traffic
that's
back
supposed to
to
help the
myself.
algorithm. Yeah.
And, I even joined one of those engagement pods to see
Mhm.
like what that was all about. And I realized that the engagement pods, yes, drove traffic. Yes, I got a lot of comments. I got a lot of likes. But none of
But it's
those
not business.
people were converting to what I needed them to be part of. So,
No.
like, it wasn't true engagement. It was fake engagement, and, the algorithms picked that up. They were like, "Okay, this person all of a sudden has people from all over the world liking and commenting on all of their posts, but nobody's actually clicking the link in the post to go, do what they need to do."
Yeah. Yeah, they could tell. Yeah, LinkedIn is smart. I mean, it'll know. And at the end of the day, that fake engagement doesn't do anything for your business.
Exactly.
Nice.
But I wanted to test it out because in theory, I was just like, I want to write an article about this. This is something a lot of people do. I want to write an article about it. I've never done it. Let me do it for a week, see what it does. And I did it for a week and I realized that it was actually hurting my engagement from potential clients than helping it. So I was just like, okay, well, now I know. And I put it and I left the groups.
Nice. I think that's a good move. Yeah, especially on the current client side of things, right? They don't want to see, people from all over it's not hard for anybody to spot. Like the group of people here doesn't necessarily make sense. Like this seems like a bot or a pod or something that's going
Yeah.
on. Because I
Like,
used to
why
know
is this
people.
random doctor from India commenting
Yeah.
about how SEO does great? It's like, they wouldn't. Normally, they wouldn't.
Yeah. So, no, I think that's a smart move. Got a final question here before wrapping up and making sure you're able to share where they can connect with you and Euro and all of that. If you had, a magic wand and could fix one thing inside your business overnight, whether it's operations, client management, scaling, what would it be and why?
It would probably be the ability. Good question. That one's a good one because there's so many pain points in growing a business and trying to figure out the exact one that I would wanna fix if I had that magic wand. It would probably be my tech stack, to be all in all reality, be able to, use the tech stack that I actually want to use to grow everything without having to spend the ridiculous amount of money for this enterprise stack. Because,
Yeah.
I use a lot of small, medium business size, when it comes to the technical stuff that I use because, it's more cost effective and it generally does exactly what I need it to do.
Yeah.
But, when I say I'm using XYZ to help grow instead of, ABC, companies are like, I'd rather you use this when helping me. I know that that is the one that everybody uses and is the best. And it's just like, yeah, but the hefty price tag to that ends up making me have to charge you more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like
You know,
that's the other side of it.
Yeah, like if I'm spending $10,000 on my tech stack every month, I'm gonna have to push that forward to my clients. And I don't want my clients to come in and feel like I'm taking advantage of them because there are plenty of e-commerce agencies out in the world. And I know that I am one of a million. And my advantage is the personal touch and that I don't cost them an arm and a leg to work with.
Right. No.
So
No, that's a good answer. I think a lot of you're not the first person I've spoken to as an entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur kind of thing that has the same boat. I mean, accessing some of those monolith, like kind of top of the line softwares, it's not easy unless you really want to be charging your customers an arm and a leg. And if that's not what you want to do, if you're like a nice person, you're personable, and that's like you like I like, going back to the referral example of earlier, everybody wins. It doesn't feel like everybody wins if you have to charge them so much money because the technical tools that you're paying for.
exactly. And, that's definitely something I've seen in businesses where they bought that enterprise software because
Yo, and that's what's
every,
crushing them.
Yeah. They bought that enterprise software because that's the best of the best. That's the one that everyone wants to use. And it's like, but you're not at the level to need that software yet. You're paying so much for a software you don't necessarily need right now.
Right.
You could use X, Y, and Z software that's a quarter of the price and will do the exact same thing. It's just a little bit more work on your side to get it to work the way you want it to. But if you actually sit down and do the work correctly at the start with these new softwares, it's going to be just as good as that enterprise one. It's just if you don't set it up correctly, it's going to work like a quarter of the price software.
Right.
And that's something I've seen a lot when it comes, especially within the e-commerce world. But there's also the flip side to that. If you have a very ambitious growth goal, and you're going to use one of these lower end softwares, you're not going to hit those growth goals. So you have to bite the bullet and buy those enterprise softwares. It's just for myself, I don't necessarily need all those enterprise softwares all the time. And to pay that monthly fee for all of those, it's just not worth it long term. But if the client wants to invest their own money to get that enterprise software and I build it out for them for their own company and they own it, they control it once I'm gone,
Right. They're paying
that
they're
I will
paying the
do.
monthly subscription, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I would say the same thing, yeah. If you wanna invest into it, it's your tool and your system, go for it. But, I have plenty of softwares that will essentially do the same thing. They take more work, but, don't cost an arm.
Yeah. Like even with the AIs that I use, I sat there for weeks defining exactly what I want it to do when I tell it to do things. And, I would play and play and play and play until I figured out how to get it exactly how I wanted it. Then I would ask it to give me all the information based off of that task. And then I save that in, a separate file or something like that. And when somebody needs, like, hey, I really can't figure out how to prompt ChatGPT or Gemini to do this. Do you have an idea of how to do it? I can be like, oh, here's my prompt that I made for that specific task, and it will do exactly what you want it to do. There's no tweaking it anymore because I tweaked it to the point where it does what it needs to do. And that's a huge thing. If you go into doing anything, if you don't establish the parameters at the start, you're not going to be successful at the end because you're just going to be fixing fires the whole way through from start to finish because you didn't do the solid foundation at the start.
Yeah, and I think a good takeaway too there is everybody's using AI. You just mentioned it's like ChatGPT or Gemini. If you're not saving your prompts and you're doing something over and over again, different clients or different decks or different things, like you're really shooting yourself in the foot. Like, because you spend a lot of time, perfecting that and getting it right just to go back and start from square one the next week or in 2 weeks when you have to do the exact same thing for another client.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people don't think of that. They think ChatGPT is just gonna remember it. It does remember your chats, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't prompt it the same. Even if you say, "Hey, I wanna do the exact same thing we did for this client," it's not gonna remember the exact nuances and details of the prompt that you used. So I think that should be a big takeaway from people listening is save your prompts if you're doing something over and over again.
Yeah, and you should definitely save them outside of the
Yes.
AI software you're using
Yes.
because,
Yes.
I've asked Gemini, "Hey, if I prompt you to do this, what are you supposed to do?" And it's missing like 6 of the steps. And I'm like, "Okay, no. When I prompt you to do this, this is what you're supposed to do." And then I put the prompt sheet back in there, then boom, it works again.
Yeah. No, it's, AI still got I think we were talking about that on the first call. It's still got a ways to go. It is not the super intelligence, system as of yet. And you can clearly see that if you're working with it, every week or every day. You can see the limiting capabilities that it's got. But, obviously there's a lot of potential with it too.
Absolutely.
Well, Adam, this has been pretty awesome. You shared so many actual insights for anybody listening in this kind of crazy digital landscape. For listeners who want to connect with you or learn about Euro, where should they go?
So you could go to euroholdings.com, spelt YURO. If you go to EURO, you're going to get somebody over in the UK, and it's not going to be anything to do with e-commerce. But YUROholdings.com, you'll run into us. You can also follow us across all social media. We're Euro Social, or you can just scan that QR code and it will bring you to everything Euro related.
Nice. Perfect. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to just, scan that barcode. If you're on Spotify, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to go to the description. I'll drop a link for Adam's LinkedIn and website for you. But thanks again for joining me, and to everyone listening, make sure you go actually follow the Optimized Business podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and LinkedIn for more conversations with entrepreneurs like Adam who are building smarter, scaling with purpose, and actually have like insights as to what's happening in the market right now. So I'm Nick Clink. I'll see you next time. And thank you again, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.